Rabbanan. So who does a person sit shiva for? So actually, we don't really have a lot of details in the Torah about sitting shiva.
No, say
right?
the least.
To say we found, like last week, we came up with these really convoluted ways to understand shiva 7 days, Shmo Rechokas 1 day. It really is not a lot determined. So the Gemara says, Ton Rabbanan, Kol Omer b'Parshat Kohanim, Shebohem Yitamei Lahem, Avel Misabel Alehem. The people who are enumerated in the beginning of Parshas Emor, who the Kohen can become Tameh, which are the 7 family relatives. So those are the people that an Avel sits Shiva for. That already has a concept. In other words, a Kohen may not become Tameh. If he could become Tameh for these 7 people, well, it means it's a family relationship, and therefore that's a person you ought to be sitting Shiva for. Very close family relationship. And who are they? V'elahein, Ishto, spouse, Aviv v'imo, father and mother, Achiv v'achoto, his brother and his sister, and Beno ubito, and his son and his daughter, and that equals 2, 4, 7. That's 7. Okay, and that's min haTorah, people that he would inherit from. Hosifu alehem achiv v'achota ptula me'imo. They included the first list were brothers or half brothers on the father's side who he would inherit from or could inherit him. On the mother's side were not included, so the Chachamim came along to include these half brothers, half siblings on the mother's side. V'achoto nesua bein mi'aviv bein mimo, and really min haTorah, or for the Kohen, it's only achoto habesula, right, the unmarried sister. And Chazal came along to say that a person sits shiva even for a married sister, right, regardless of whatever side it's from. Okay, and that becomes therefore the extension of who are included here. How do we know, by the way, where these come from? The Torah tells us for the Kohen, it says La'aviv, L'imo, L'achiv, L'achoto, right? And it says L'sheira Karove, love includes his wife.
Right.
Okay, Shem Shemitabel Alehem, Kach Mitabel Lashnim Shalahem. And then the Brisa adds something very unusual, which we don't follow, which says that the same way that you are going to sit Shiva for these people, so you'll sit Shiva for the secondary extensions of these people. Which means, if these people are sitting Shiva, right?
If your brother's sitting Shiva, you should sit for your nephew?
No. If your wife is sitting Shiva, right, then you would also sit Shiva with her. Or if your brother may be sitting Shiva for his wife,
right?
Correct. Or in this case, it may be, let's say, your brother's son. Your brother may be sitting Shiva for his son, child. So then you would also sit Shiva for him. That's who says it's Rabbi Akiva. Okay, and that's a very large extension of what Shiva would mean. And according to Tosfos says it's only going up and down in vertical lines for children or parents of those people, right? But not necessarily horizontal lines for spouses and so forth. Or their brothers and sisters. We just started, okay? So we just said that the people in the Novel sit Shiva for are going to be defined as the people that a Kohen is going to be Matame for. The 7 relatives a Kohen has to be Matame, so to an Avel. And we said Chazal added as well, not just brothers and sisters from the father's side, full brothers or half brothers on the father's side, but even from the mother's side, even though there's no Yerusha, and even though it looks like a Kohen is not going to be Matame for them, and then but you would be a sit Shiva for them, and then we added now, according to Rabbi Kiva,
before that, his married sister.
And his married sister, correct. And we also included a married sister to sit Shiva for, even though Kohen is only going to be Matame for an unmarried sister. Right? The logic was, because the Torah says, the Torah says that the logic of the Torah is probably if she's married, then probably her husband can be Matame for her. The Kohen does not have to be Matame for his married sister who's living somewhere else or married to someone else. So that's one thing, and that's accepted. That's our definition of who a person sits Shiva for. And then the Gemara extends, according to Rabbi Kiva, the same way that the Avel would sit Shiva for these people, so he's also going to sit Shiva for a secondary extension. If these people are sitting Shiva, he would also sit Shiva for them. He's drawn along with them. Who says it's Rabbi Akiva? Okay? And when pointed out, according to Tosa, says this only works in vertical lines for their children, but would not apply necessarily for their spouses or their siblings. Rav Shimon ben Elazar omer ein misabel al ben beno v'al avi aviv. Rav Shimon ben Elazar says no. The only extension is directly vertical, not their vertical, but his vertical. In other words, for a grandson or a grandfather, the person would also sit Shiva for. Obviously, a father and a son, the person would sit Shiva for. But we extended, according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, only one generation on immediately in terms of the direct genealogical birth line. Who says that? Rav Shimon ben Elazar. So we have two opinions so far. Rabbi Akiva says it's all if these 7 people sit Shiva, the person has to sit Shiva with them. Rav Shimon ben Elazar says only grandchild and grandfather. The Chachamim omrim kol shmisabel alav misabel imo. The Chachamim say, and it looks very similar to what Rabbi Akiva said, that if they're sitting Shiva, he sits Shiva with them. It looks pretty much like a mirror, like the same statement as the first statement of Rabbi Akiva that says Shem Misabel Alem Kach Misabel Shneim Shalom. So the Gemara says Chachamim Hainu Tanakama. It's the same thing. But Chachamim is saying the same thing as the Tanakama, which we have here as Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara says Ika Benayu Imo Babayis. So the Gemara says really the Chachamim are not saying that you sit Shiva, but only when the person is with you, you have to show that you're, as if to say, sitting Shiva with them. So when Imo Babayis, when they're together in the same house, in other words, according to the Chachamim, they have to actually be together with you in the same house, and according to the first opinion, it's not even together in the same house. But if
could be in different cities, could be anywhere. According to the first
correct, and correct. Okay. And the logic seems to be the idea of shalom bayis, that these are people that are very close to you, and therefore if they're sitting Shiva, you should sit Shiva with them. Now, right, and we'll give a couple of examples. Now the question is, we don't do this today.
Not at all.
Right, not at all. All right, many times a spouse can be sitting Shiva. You don't hear that a husband is sitting Shiva because of the wife is. And the answer is because the Gemara also says in another place that if they're mochel, if they say you don't have to sit Shiva, right? I mean the whole idea is shalom bayis. So if they're mochel that the other person doesn't have to sit Shiva with them, the other person doesn't have to sit Shiva with them, and therefore we assume today that in today everybody is mochel.
Without asking.
In other words, everybody has an independent personality, and therefore the assumption is that they're automatically mochel. It's tough enough for them to sit Shiva. Right. They're not going to require someone else to actually do all Nehugei Avelis. Right. So therefore we automatically exclude a person from sitting Shiva, required to sit Shiva with someone who is in the same house with them. Okay, that's how we get around this halacha, which you never ever see.
Okay. Around lots of halachas.
Because otherwise it makes people suffer.
Correct. All right, and maybe in those days people lived in much closer surroundings. Maybe it was a different situation.
Maybe
people
were expected to
society.
Right.
And by the way, there's a difference. We know that in the days of the Gemara, when people came to pay a Shiva visit, they stayed for a very long period of time.
What do you mean? Like a day or two?
They stayed the whole day. No, you go, you pay, you walk in, you sit down.
Minutes,
you go and you wait for the next person to come in, you go out. It looks there that people kind of just moved in. I don't know, like we don't do this. But just people stayed and stayed and stayed. Probably there was maybe, that's just the way it was. So it may make sense that if everybody's there all the time, maybe it would make sense that so the person who is the relative, who is the spouse, whatever it is, would also sit Shiva. I don't know.
How do you know that they stay for a very long time? Where does it say that?
It comes out of a couple of Gemaras. It doesn't say it, but it comes up in a couple of places that it looks like people staying for a long period of time.
I mean, after all, if you live very far away and transportation was very difficult,
sure.
You weren't going home.
Didn't drive and come back.
Or maybe if life was less complicated then than it is today, when you went and you sat there. People just stayed the whole day. You hear about it. You hear about today with close friends, right? Person sitting shiva, so close friends stay the whole time. Hamonam, they come in, they stay for. It's.
No, but the women do. They set up this, they help do this.
Right. But women and men, most people, unless they're that close circle, are going to come, stay for a bit, and then leave. And it's a rotation. It's a circle. Okay. And the Ovel is saying the same thing over and over again to everyone who comes 10 minutes later. It's actually maybe very good, I'm saying, but it's a repetition. Good. So we have a couple of examples where this comes out, where it says as follows, Kiha, the Amalei Rabachir Lebrei. Like the following case where Rabbi said to his son, V'chein Amalei Rav Huna LeRabba Brei, another case Rav Huna said to Rabba's son, Bi'apa Nahog Avilusa, Below Apa Lo Tinhog Avilusa. When Bi'apa Bifaneha.
Bifaneha, I see.
Okay, when when your wife was sitting, his wife was sitting shiva. When you're with her or in front of her, you should sit shiva with her. And when you're not there, you're not in front of her, you don't have to sit shiva. So it's only, once again, it seems very directly together with her. That's why it's very clear. It looks like Darkei Shalom. Mar Ukva, another case. Mar Ukva Shachav Le Bar Chamua. Mar Ukva, his brother-in-law's son. Bar Chamua, or is it his son, father-in-law's son?
Brother-in-law. The son of Mar Ukva's father-in-law.
Correct. Father-in-law's son. Thank you. Father-in-law's son, which makes it his brother-in-law. Okay?
The son of his brother-in-law, I think, right?
The son of his father.
Son of his father.
No, son of his father-in-law.
Achi Ishto, it says. I'm just telling what.
Achi Ishto, correct. His father-in-law's son. His brother-in-law. His wife's brother. Okay?
Exactly.
Good. So Bar Chamua, the son of his father-in-law, died. Sava, and obviously his wife, is sitting shiva for her brother. That's the case. It's a convoluted way to say it. Sava l'meisav alei shivo shloshim. So he thought, this is Mar Ukva thought, that he should also do shiva and shloshim together with his wife. Okay? And by the way, this really means the whole thing. It means nilas sandal, and we can't wash, and can't sicha, and it's pretty serious. Even if bifaneha means you can't do that. It means while you're together with her, you would have to sit on the floor. So he thought to do it the whole time. So all Rav Huna l'gabei, so Rav Huna came to him, ashkechei, and he saw him doing the nehugim of shiva with his wife. His wife is sitting on the floor. He's sitting on the floor. Right? It was standing out. Maybe they did Kriyat Amita. The bed was upside down. So Amalei, so Rav Huna says to Mar Ukva, Tzudnaisa bois lamechal. Tzudnaisa was a meal like the Sudas Havra. Rashi says Sudas the Avel, Sudas the Avel. You're really hungry. You're doing this because you want to get a portion of the Sudas Havra.
But today, even those who aren't direct mourners, it's always the immediate family to eat Sudas Havra.
It's a dig at him. He's saying, what are you doing this for? You're doing this to get a good meal. Okay, you're doing this to get a good meal. Like So why lo? Because why? Because you don't have to do this far. Lo amud l'chvorishto el l'chami v'chamoso. The only people that you would have to do this for, to honor your wife, and this way see it's Darkei Shalom, kvorishto is her parents. Is her parents, right? Her father, and her mother.
His in-laws.
His in-laws, correct. She's sitting, because the Avelis for a parent is different and stronger than Avelis for a sibling.
Right.
So who's she doing this for?
She was sitting shiva for her brother. So he learned the halacha that when the people who if the person died, he would sit shiva for them. If that person's sitting shiva, he has to also sit shiva in front of with them. So comes along Rav Huna saying, no, that doesn't apply to everyone. It only applies for regarding her parents. So it's already been limited. The Tanya, here you see where this comes up. Misha meis chamiv chamoso. If a person's father-in-law or mother-in-law, wife's parents, died, he can't force his wife to put on her makeup. Kochelet comes from kachol. Right, this is blue blue makeup, blue eyeshadow. Pokesses is rouge. So in other words, he can't force his wife to look nice for him because she's sitting shiva.
It's a different word in the Megillah Sister for the cosmetics. I forget the word. It's a different word they use.
Yes, probably.
In the Megillah Sister. When I talked about the queen, she got her cosmetics. They gave her the
Shemen Amor. Shisha Chadashim Shem Amor Shisha Chadashim B'Samim.
That's what you're talking about.
Uvesamrukei Hanashim.
right?
There we go. I win. Okay.
Yeah, no, I can remember. You can. There's no contest on that.
Tamrukei Hanashim. Yes.
It's a different word.
Correct.
That's probably a Persian word.
It's probably a Persian word, and this is probably the word that they use. Or kochelet is obviously we understand. Kochelet is from kochol, blue, right? This was blue eyeshadow. Pokes is also a different type of makeup. Okay. So in other words, this sounds obvious. He
think
he can't force his wife that she should get dressed up for him because she's sitting shiva. Ella kofa mitasa, but here look what the continuation is. He turns over his bed. Remember they had in those days kfiyat mita, where the bed was turned upside down. They had separate beds. It appears, correct? Okay. So and by the way, part of it I think is that they also sat on these beds. These were multi-purpose types of furniture.
Was it a divan, like a Persian divan?
I don't know exactly what it was, but it looks
didn't have much.
correct. But knows whatever it was, they turned it over. Today, by the way, what it was obviously it's on the floor. We don't do kfiyat hamita.
You said without the cushion. Take the cushions away.
Correct. That's close to the floor, either on the floor or close to the floor.
What's the reason why you changed that?
Because our beds don't turn over well, and we don't use the beds the same way. It would be hard to take our beds and turn them up. First of all, we don't use them for sitting on. We use our beds for sleeping, strictly sleeping. And second of all, the bed, if you turn it upside down, would be impossible to use. Right, so the whole bed structure has changed. Apparently these were much more simple beds, and they were reversible. Not the mattresses, the bed frame.
So how could they sleep on that bed, on those beds?
I guess they were reversible.
So there's a mattress underneath?
I don't know exactly. It was a simpler lifestyle. I don't know. People used to sleep on straw. People used to sleep on the floors,
Absolutely.
People used to sleep much closer to the ground. They probably slept with a little bit off the ground so the mice wouldn't get to them. So what does he do? So he has to kofa mitaso, uvenoheg ima avelis. And he has to do avelis with her. Okay, for whom? What's the case in this? Who's she sitting shiva for? Her father-in-law, her father, or her mother, right? Misha made chamir v'chamatov. His father-in-law or his father-in-law, his mother-in-law died. He said shiva with his wife.
So there's a proof. In other words, what he said.
There's a proof that this applies to the father-in-law and the mother-in-law, and the Gemara understands this, therefore, to be very specifically father-in-law and mother-in-law. Okay.
But we don't do this today at all.
Correct. So I said today we don't do this because it seems that it's a whole idea of kirva and shalom bayis. And shalom bayis, a person says, I don't really care if you do this or not. There's no sense in shalom bayis.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is if you try to do it today, people would wonder about you, right? That's the point.
Right, so the whole thing is because of shalom bayis. So then the Rishonim say, if it's shalom bayis, then if the person says, I don't need this for shalom bayis, they can pass on it. And then you go one step forward and say, well, you know what? In today's rate, today's Middle Ages rate today, everybody's going to pass on this. They're going to say, we don't need this for shalom bayis. So therefore, no one does it today anymore.
Is it not mentioned in Shulchan Aruch at all?
I don't think so. Okay, I don't know, but it's surely not done.
Yeah, but they say Kaddish though. If his brother-in-law doesn't say Kaddish, he'll say Kaddish.
That's not sitting shiva.
No.
Okay.
And that's not strictly optional.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. So he quotes here. He's actually quoting it from the Shulchan Aruch. He says people don't do it. The Ramah says should be amena mekilim ba'veluzil ve'ena misabel akrovok ukrovav. V'hamachmer mizeh eino elamina machmirin. Hamasmihin. The people doing strange things, not machmirin.
What's masmisin?
The tamua. And they say, however, that a person does a little bit of avelus on that first week, and some take other minagi avelus. But it's not really a full Avelus as we call all the strictures of Avelus. So yes, you could do it, but you don't have to do it, and we tend not to do it. Okay, it makes a whole lot of sense. If when you're sitting in the house and people are there, and you're there with the Avelim, that you're going to behave like an Avel. You're sad, somber, right? But people don't have to sit on the floor. In fact, people are very superstitious. If you sit on the floor, sit on the low thing. Ooh.
And that's that famous rule that Rabbi mentioned about it being Mekel in Divrei Avelis.
Yeah. I brought the art scroll.
The Machmir book. Oh.
What's the title of that book?
Morning and Halacha.
Morning and Halacha.
You never saw it? Okay, well.
I think so. Quite a few years. Many.
That one is the landmark.
There was someone with the Morna, 172.
Got all the footnotes and this.
I gave it to my cousin because he was in Avelis.
And he gave it back?
I've never seen it again.
Which cousin?
Okay.
Rich cousin.
Here we go. Okay, so here we go. In other words, here. The original halacha stated in the Talmud, whoever one mourns for, one mourns with. In other words, if one had a family member who one would be obligated to mourn if he died, and that family member became a mourner, one is obligated to mourn with him. Okay? In our day, however, this is not practiced. Quotes the Ramah. Moreover, anyone who wishes to be stringent with himself in this matter is only acting foolishly. Once again, quoting from the Ramah. Right? Because he's...
Why are you foolish?
Because he does not give the impression of showing respect for the mourner, but mocking them. Okay?
Yeah.
That's because
Talk about 180 degrees.
What does that mean?
It means because they're Avelim and you're not Avelim.
So how are you mocking somebody? You're in sympathy with somebody.
So let's finish. So that nonetheless, the halacha still leaves its traces with regards to those family members with whom one has such a close blood relationship that one could not serve as a witness in a court case involving them. If such a family member becomes a mourner, one also adopts certain practices of mourning from after the burial until the conclusion of the Shabbos after the burial. That's Shavuot Rishon. One bathes only in lukewarm water, but not hot. One refrains from attending group meals, even a Sudas mitzvah. In communities where the custom is that the mourner does not change clothes for Shabbos, one refrains from changing one's garments for Shabbos. Okay, some say if you do this, you can still wash your hair in hot water for Friday, etc., etc., etc. This limited type of mourning should be observed for one's father-in-law and mother-in-law, even though they are related only by marriage. Same for a stepmother. Okay, some rule that this type of mourning is observed only when one is in the place where the actual mourner is sitting shiva, and that one says somewhere else. Correct. This type of mourning is only observed during the first week after death, or during the first week after hearing of death, if it arrives within 30 days. Okay. So, there's a little bit there, but it's not too much, and some people do it and some people don't. Okay, I think if you were to ask most people, you would find this very strange. Okay?
Very strange. I think that's the point. Find it
so,
what's the logic of mocking?
The logic of mocking is because you're showing that even though you're not a mourner, you're doing the mourning patterns.
Yeah, but why would that?
No, it's like let me say, it's like kind of saying that you're going to get up at Berchas Kohanim and you're going to put your hands up like that. People are going to say, "What are you doing? You're not a Kohen."
Oh, I see.
In other words, who do you think you are? You want, like, as if to say you want to join. You think being a mourner is such a simple thing.
I got you.
Being a mourner is a state of mind. And the truth is, there's a lot of logic to the Hilchos Avelis. Sometimes we question exact specifics, but there's a certain degree of sadness that happens to a direct mourner that a person who is secondary can appreciate. Right?
I got you.
Absolutely. And yet, in the old days, I guess they felt differently about it. That's all you can say.
I don't know. When there's family discussions, I always say, I'm only a son-in-law. Okay?
Yeah, I understand. Toby does that.
Okay, so what does that mean? So it means that, there's a certain things that blood relatives can say that you can't say, even if you're married for all these years, because you kind of married in. The same thing is with Avelis. Okay. So I don't think it's that bad to say it's mocking. Okay.
Well, if it's a stranger, maybe you can say.
So therefore, if you do some of it, and you're showing empathy, that's fine. That's exactly halacha. You're showing you're being respectful, but you don't have to do the same thing. You don't have to sit on the floor. I got to tell you something. Sitting on the floor is very difficult.
But why would that be mocking? I don't like the word.
It's not mocking, but it's saying that you want to do this only when you're there. I don't know. After as an ovel, I found sitting for a full week on the floor, or those low things that they have that you never really fit into. Yes. Not on the floor, whatever it is, but you're sitting on these low things. So it's
So I respect the guy for doing it.
Yeah.
He's not getting anything out of it.
Good, but he can still walk away from it. The point of it is he can still walk away, and therefore when he can, he does.
Strangers walk in, people who don't know, they might find it bizarre. Strange, right?
So that's all. And once again, I think the other part, this is clear, not what the Gemara says, is people are very superstitious.
That's true.
Right? So people, who are you, wow, what are you doing? Okay, so let's finish up this brisa here, because the brisa says something very interesting, actually. So far it looks fairly empathic for the husband about the wife.
Absolutely.
Right? First of all, it makes it very clear he can't force her to dress up for him because she's sitting shiva. That sounds like it should be axiomatic, right?
Exactly.
But you'll get to the end of this and you'll see that why it has to say that at the beginning. So v'chein, now it gives a reverse. V'chein hi shemeis chamio chamosa. Similarly, if the wife lost her father-in-law, mother-in-law, the husband is sitting shiva. Ein rasha liot kocheles ve'pokeses. Okay, so once again, she has to show symbolically joining him by not putting on makeup, even though she's not a mourner. The first one was she's the mourner and he can't force her to put on makeup. Now she's not the mourner, he's the mourner, right? He can't be intimate with his wife altogether, but she also can't put on the makeup to show that she is together respectful. Ella kofa mitasav noheges imo avelis. Okay.
Exactly the reverse, right? Exactly the same.
No, but noheget imo avelis.
Correct.
She should do avelis.
No, that's exactly what he does.
That's said what he did too.
In other words, we're following saying that when an in-law dies, the spouse does the same thing. We're not talking about what we do today. We're talking about the days. Right. So this talks about a spouse, a in-laws passing away, and the spouse is going to do nehugi avelis.
Right.
Now, and I said we interpret this very limited to only refer to parents of the spouse. How do you know that? So now the Gemara proves it. V'tanya idach, and now we have another brisa which seems to say a little bit differently, and it says Afa pisha amru eina rashay lakufet ishto lioto kochelet v'liopotsekes. Even though when he is sitting shiva, he can't force his wife.
No, when she was, right? Sorry, Ein lo rashay lichof et ishto. So that was where she was. That was the first case.
Right, when she is sitting shiva, even though he can't force his wife to
get makeup on,
to put makeup on, nonetheless, but be'emes amru mozeget lo takos umatzeget lo mita. Nonetheless, Chazal allowed or required her, this is fascinating, that she mixes his cup, she makes the wine the right proportion, she prepares his bed, she also washes his face, his hands, and his feet. So the Gemara says...
and she's sitting Shiva at this point.
Right, and she's sitting Shiva. Now what's the kasha here?
Never mind the monkey.
What's the kasha here? The kasha is a very difficult brisa for Western sensibilities, modern sensibilities.
I would say
it's not that she's a slave.
No. It's her first responsibility to the husband.
So what's the kasha?
What do you mean?
Well, the kasha
the Gemara is bringing the second brisa to be the opposite of the first brisa.
Clearly.
Right? Remember, from the first brisa we said we're going to limit this only to in-laws.
Right.
Right? From the second brisa, we're going to show that it's only limited to in-laws, not applied to something else. Now, it doesn't look, you have to look very carefully in this brisa. The brisa looks like it's a very anti-feminist kind of brisa. Looks like a very chauvinistic kind of brisa. Mm-hmm. Right? She's sitting shiva. She still has to prepare his cup of wine, and she has to wash him, and she has to do this and set his bed. So, I mean, it looks like you kind of just, you recoil when you read it and you forget to look what the brisa is trying to say.
It doesn't say necessarily who she's sitting shiva for.
Right, but so what? But what's the kasha?
So, if this is more than just the parents, this could be her brother.
Yeah, but what's the kasha? So you have to look carefully, and the kasha is the fact that she has to make his bed means his bed is not kofet mitah.
was wondering if anything because it said
that's the piece between the lines. In other words, the first Brisa said
he has to turn over.
He turns over his bed. Turn over the bed. You're not making the bed.
Right.
Right. So we don't even think, because we don't even know what Kriyat Amita really is. The second Brisa says his bed is set up normally. She's sitting Shiva, but she still has to do the following basic things because this guy is such like a neb, he doesn't know how to wash himself. Okay? Yeah. But however you react upon that, but it means that his bed is normal bed. She's sleeping on Kriyat Amita, sitting on Kriyat Amita. His guy's bed is regular, and she's got to make his bed regular. So you see, this is the hidden kasha. It's not stated that the second brisa says that guess what? He's not doing avelis. Right? All right. He can't force her to put on makeup. Wonderful. But it doesn't say anywhere in the second brisa about his sitting shiva even. Right, the first one says no higima avelis. Here it simply says she can put makeup on, but she has to go clean him up and prepare him and clean his feet and clean his toes, right?
And make his bed.
And he's not sitting shiva.
Clearly.
Kasha. Mm-hmm. So Gemara says kasha nadade. There's a question. That's the question everybody misses. So the Gemara says, "Alav shmamina kan b'chamim v'chamoso kan b'shar krovim shmamina." The difference is going to be the first case made it very clear who she was sitting shiva for, which was for her parents. Second one didn't mention it means anyone else but sitting for the parents.
Right.
So therefore, that becomes the case of Mar Ukva, whose wife was sitting shiva for her brother. Right. He understood that he's supposed to sit shiva with her. Came along Rav Huna to say, it's only if she's sitting shiva for her parents. Right. You look like you're snoring to get a piece of the Suda Savra cake. Okay. So already it's limited. You see, the Gemara, you get the impression that the Gemara is limiting how much shiva you have to show when the spouse is sitting shiva.
Right.
So first we said you got to be with her. She got to be with you, or she's in the same place. Now we've limited it to parents. Okay. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa that seems to say like this: Lo amr lekvod ishto elachami v'chamoso bilvad. The only time that you're doing this for the honor of your wife is when she's sitting shiva for her parents. Period. Okay.
Right.
All right. So this is that's the end of the story. Now we have a really unrelated story, but seeing we're mentioning stories, I think it's why this next thing comes up. This is a story about tearing kriya. Okay, tearing kriya. Halacha is the person is supposed to tear kriya standing up. A lot of halachas. These tear all the garments. Right, tear all the shirt, inner garments, outer garments. One garment for parents is supposed to be all the real garments, not the undershirt necessarily. Right. Yeah. There's I actually saw here that says some people say you're supposed to tear your tzitzis, and I read it and I didn't understand what it meant. Then I realized it's probably talking about Hasidim wear tzitzis outside.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's an outer garment. Yeah. Right, the woolen tzitzis with the racing stripes. So so that would make sense. So at any rate,
they do make you stand up now, I think.
So you do stand up. Yeah. You stand up. It's based upon this Gemara. So the Gemara is actually going to tell us that the halacha is you're supposed to tear kriya standing up. Okay, why? Not that clear, but more trying to give a reason.
And you're supposed to do it right in front of the mace or something?
They're supposed to actually do it at the moment you hear bad news.
Yeah.
Now those kriyas, when it really would be if a person is there when a person passes away. The moment Shas B'Tiri is supposed to tear kriya then. It's the saddest thing possible. A person dies. Human being is alive now and now is dead. The real time that our Avel is supposed to do it is when they hear the news that the person passed away, even if they're not there. That's a time of ultimate sadness. We don't do it that usually today, Len, because people don't know how to tear kriya, so we have deferred it until right before the actual Levaya.
They do it at, I forget now, they do it at the Feld before they...
They do it at the funeral home.
They do it at the funeral home, usually before they go in.
Okay.
If it's a graveside funeral, they do it right before the cemetery, right before you do the... right. Okay. But you do it right there. Why do we do it then? Because it's really supposed to be done earlier. So now, before we start, because after that you become an Avel, right? So now we do it then. The rabbi is there, the people are there, people can show them how to do it. Okay. So the Gemara says as follows: this is a true story from famous people. Amemar shachav le barbare. Okay, see, I guess it's connected because it's an extension. That's why it's here. It's not a direct relative. It's a second generation. Amemar shachav le barbare. His grandson died. Okay, so once again, this is about a second generation who he really doesn't sit shiva for. But you see, he does some form of pseudo kriya.
This is his grandson?
Barbare.
I'm saying, didn't we learn before that it said
This is someone else.
For your grandfather or your grandson, you could sit shiva? Didn't it say
Correct.
that?
Right. Okay, so that's why he's going to do kriya.
Right.
So I'm saying that's really why it's connected. It's connected because we said if in the direct, according to the shita of Rav Shimon Elazar, okay, which we don't paskin like, by the way. According to the shita of Rav Shimon Elazar, there were three shitos, right? Rabbi Kiva, Rav Shimon Elazar, Chachamim. You only do it for direct biological line, right? So in this case, this becomes a story that happens and where he actually does it. What does he do? It's about kriya. It's not about actually sitting shiva. Right. So Amemar shachav le barbare.
Sorry, Atabre. I'm sorry. Am I skipping?
I'll start again. Did I skip a line?
Maybe. I don't know. Emat, right? Let's start again.
Amemar shachav le.
Amemar shachav le barbare. Amemar.
Right.
His barbare. Barbare is his grandson.
Right,
Ben
right,
Haben.
Right.
Shachiv died.
Yeah.
Okay. Kari ilave.
I have Atabre.
I didn't get up to the bray.
That's the very next one.
Yeah, but Kara ilave.
Right.
He did kriya.
Right.
So he ripped kriya. Okay. Right. That's all we know about this so far.
What's the very next word you have?
Atabre.
Okay. Right.
His son comes.
Right.
So first the grandfather rips kriya.
Right.
And then the son, the father of the child comes.
Yeah.
Karo ba'apei. And he rips again. In front of his son. Okay, Kara b'fanav.
Yeah.
Okay, so a Maimer then rips in front of his son. Okay. Now, it's not clear why. It occurred to Miyushav, and then he remembered that he was sitting when he ripped kriya. So it got the Miyushav Kara. He remember he was saying we did Kriya. Kam Kara Mu'umad. He then stood up and did Kriya a third time. So he does 3 Kriyas. Okay. Now, question is why did he do the second Kriya? What was the matter with the first Kriya itself? It's not. Some say that the first Kriya he was also sitting, and the son came along and didn't want to tell him that he didn't do halachically, and he made the same mistake again.
He didn't know.
Right, or he forgot. Ratosa seems to say that he did Kriya a second time because he wanted to identify with him.
Yeah.
Right.
Now that's what Rav Stein says.
Correct. Right. So he does it a second time either to show he's joining with the son, or because the son kind of hinted to him he should do it again because the son wanted him to stand up, and he made the same mistake a second time, and then he has to do it a third time. Okay, the bottom line of the story is that you see clearly that he have to stand to do kriya.
Right.
The story is brought in because you see here's an example of someone who extends the line of doing an act of avelus or sadness. It's actually not an act of avelus, an act of sadness. And then you learn from this that you have to stand up doing kriya. And if you didn't stand up doing kriya, you have to do it again. So it's not just you have to stand up, but if he didn't stand up, you have to repeat it.
Right.
Okay.
You said it's sorry.
For whatever reason was he did it the second time. Clearly, the third time was because of the fact he didn't stand on the second time.
Correct. Right. Correct. So and he remembered that, and that's why he had to stand up and do it.
But Rabbi, you said it's not an act of avelus, is it not?
It's not an act of avelus.
So
one can tear kriya. One actually can tear kriya for a lot of sad things. We don't.
We're talking about what you have to. We're talking about not the minhag. I would assume that this is, I don't know. Is it halacha? I would assume that an avel must do this, or
yes,
is it optional?
No, an avel must do this.
So
But
then why isn't it a thing of Avelis?
I'll tell you why it's not a thing of Avelis, because first of all, Avelis begins the moment we close the grave. He's not even an Avo yet.
Okay.
He's an Onain. Second of all, it's not only unique to Avelim. For example, someone else who suffered a very real tragedy. Also does Kriya. We don't do it today. We don't do it. We have formalized the sense of Kriya for an Avel. Right? We probably because our garments are much different. Our garments are not so easy to do Kriya on.
Right, for sure.
Okay, right? And the second reason is because we are more internalized. Society teaches us manners, how we kind of keep our feelings inside. And all of those completely out of control, so it's acceptable and correct. But normally we don't go around with our hearts on, so to speak, outside. So therefore we don't do it. So but I'm saying, but really a person who could suffer any other sad misfortune, whether physical or financial, they rip Kriya. Doesn't only have to be a blood relative, right? So but the point of it is you have to be standing.
Yeah.
So how do you know this? Amalei Ravashi la Meimer. So Ravashi says to a Meimer, after watching him do this 3 times, okay? Kriya de Me'uma de Minolan. How do you know that you have to do Kriya standing up? Who told you? Because obviously you had to go back and do it again. Dichsiv, it says in Eov Perik Aleph, this is the story of Eov, where the tragedy of losing his family and his fortune. It says, Vayakam Eov, Vayikras Milo. Eov gets up and rips his outer garments. Okay? So you see that becomes the fact that Eov had to stand up, right? Vayakam, he gets up, he's sitting, shows you do Kriya standing up. Okay, now, the Gemara says, wait, but that's not really a proof. I mean, because every time you stand up means you have to stand up. Hey, maybe Eov just stood up because he wanted to stand, or he was so distraught he stood. Who says that becomes a halachic imperative?
That he was Jewish then.
I'm saying.
You could say that.
I'm questioning. I'm questioning.
No, isn't this an indirect proof?
Because he was
Okay.
Jewish.
I don't know.
It doesn't say anywhere that he was Jewish.
But
The discussion whether he is or really.
Yeah.
so the answer is here's what you see. You're right. It's not a halachic proof. It's not a halachic proof.
But they're using that kind of logic with the
Great.
other stuff.
It's a good question.
Great.
That's yours. That's good. That's his. That's not me. It's his.
You're right. So the answer is it's either yes, or we're looking for a paradigm example of where someone actually does Kriya. Or more importantly, someone does Kriya standing up. Right? What happens when the brothers of Yosef realize that they've been caught with the cup? It says Vayikra, doesn't say they ripped their garments.
I forget what it says.
What?
I think so.
Somebody rips the garment somewhere.
Usually he used to put on sackcloth, and that was the standard. Put ashes on your head, carry your thing, and put on sackcloth. I forget which one they did. They didn't do all 3.
It would appear that Meimar is from the generation before Ravashi as well, right? He's
Yes. Or
he's an older statesman or something.
sounds good. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay, there's a second trip of the brothers of Yosef. They've now been loaded up with their grain to go back, and Yosef has slipped into the cup, his goblet, into the sack of who? Binyamin. And of course they catch up. Yosef sends Menashe or Ephraim to chase them, and they catch up with them. By Chapes, they check. Bagadol Hechel Bakaton Kila. Start with the biggest one, the end the smallest one, which is of course Binyamin, the last one. Vayimatzeh Gavir B'Amtachas Binyamin. Vayikru Simlo Sam. They rip their garments. Okay, so it's not about death, it's about sadness.
Yeah.
So once again, now it doesn't say standing. So to find a source that talks about standing up when you're doing Kriya, that's a little more rare. So Eov is a good example. Eov is a good example because Eov goes through like a whole real sadness thing. And Eov suffers the loss of blood relatives.
Since you have the Chumash there, a question arose as to what happened when they told Yaakov that Joseph was...
Yaakov does Kriya.
Well, when they showed him, the code that was all...
Yaakov does Kriya.
Did he do Kriya? Didn't say he stood, but...
Maybe it's because for a shed you have to stand up. Like your respect. Like your court, in a court you stand up.
I hear what you're saying.
Yaakov Simlo Sam.
Yeah. So that was a general sign of
Well, that's actually thought he was dead.
I agree.
Yeah, we
We're saying one didn't, one did. So what you're saying is
It doesn't say standing.
before.
It doesn't say
It's
stand.
a general sign
Of stand-
of that serious thing, but
And with Yaakov, Vayosem Sakba Masnov, he puts on sackcloth,
yeah, because
2 out of 3.
right?
2 out of 3.
What about Megillah Esther? Talk about Kriya, just
Just sackcloth.
Just
I remember.
sackcloth,
I remember.
right.
It's ashes and sackcloth.
Right.
Okay.
So, but I'm saying, but that's why it's either Yov is Jewish, if he's not Jewish, it's a good example. Okay, we're actually going to find a second example where a person is clearly Jewish. Okay, so Vayakom Yavayikras Milos. The Gemara says Mi'ata, but there's another case where we find standing, and this is about the Yavama who is being rejected, right? Who is the brother wants to do? She doesn't want to accept the brother, and she says Lo chafatzti lekachta, I'm sorry.
Where? It says here it's in Devarim.
I'm sorry. This is where the Yavam comes, and the Yavam who is the brother of the brother who deceived,
he doesn't want the woman.
and he says Lo chafatz lekachta. He actually has to say this in front of the Beis Din to do chalitza. She spits in front of him. Correct. She unwraps the shoe. So it says in Dvarim Chavhei v'amad v'amar.
Right.
He stands and he says Lo chafatz lekachta. He stands in front of the basin. So the Gemara says, you mean to say, every time it says when you stand, you gotta stand? But here, Hachanami, you mean the Yavam has to stand? What if the Yavam is sitting in front of the basin? Biatanya, Ben Yoshe, Ben Omed, Ben Mota, whether the Yavam is sitting or standing or bending over, it's still considered as if he did the proper statement, saying Lo chafatz lekachta. In other words, Ahmad, standing up does not mean he's got to stand up. Normally people would stand up. The same way normally people, when they do Kriya, would want to stand. It doesn't mean that you got to stand. So therefore the Gemara says, how do you know that how do you know the case of Eov is a case where you have to stand for Kriya? Maybe it's like standing. The Eov was standing over there. It means standing and sitting, it's all the same thing.
I would suspect that it would be easier to do Kriya if you're sitting down rather than standing up.
I'm not sure which is easier. Maybe easier. I don't know. Just easier.
You're tearing your garment.
It says here Mordechai did tear. It didn't say standing though. Did tear.
Mordechai also tore?
Yeah. It says right here. Let me get the pasuk here. I got the English and I got the pasuk.
You cross him like that?
Yeah. Right here. Yeah, V'yikra Mordechai es begadov.
Begadov. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. V'yalvar sak.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay, but once again, doesn't have standing.
No standing.
Good, excellent. So at any rate, I don't know which is easier, standing and ripping or sitting and ripping, but the point of it being, when it says standing, in the case of the Yavam, it doesn't have to be standing. So maybe also for standing for Kriya, it doesn't have to be standing. Yav didn't have to stand, he just stood, he was so distraught. So the Gemara says, wait, there is a difference. Amalei hasam loksi vayamod. When in the case of the Yavam, it says he stands and he says. It doesn't say, and he stood. Vayamod means he stood. It says vayamod vayomer.
It says for Ahmad.
It says v'amad v'amar. Hachaksi vayakam vayikra. Right there for the Yavam says, and he stands and he says. Okay, so he stands and he says, or he sits and he says. But there it specifically goes out of its way to tell us that Eov was sitting and stood up.
That's it. He wasn't standing.
So you could argue that in the case of the Yavam, he steps up in front of the basin, so he's got to stand in front of the basin. He's standing. He doesn't have to go out of his way to sit down. They call him up. The basin is there. She's there. She's wearing the shoe. He has to go over to her. She has to spit in front of him. He has to undo the shoe. So they're not sitting at leisure. In the case of Eov, he has to stand. He stands up and goes out of his way.
If we're learning just a simple point of standing or not standing for Eov, from every single example in the Torah, it's the person himself who has to do Kriya. Today, as you know, it's usually somebody from the funeral home that does the Kriya.
No, it's actually a person that's they actually for. So the answer is for a parent especially, the Avel has to do the Kriya. What they do, what the interferer does, is he starts it. They start it because our garments are such that this is it's very hard. Our garments are not meant for Kriya. This is double knitted. This is like a,
It's bent over.
it's bent over. It's a stitch. It's a double listing. It's a triple. It's triple.
You couldn't tear it.
So the only way they do it, they have like a little razor,
Razor.
and they razor to cut it, and they don't cut the ovel. And then once they get it beyond that, they make the ovel do it. That's properly.
They make the oval do it.
They make the ovel do it, especially for a parent.
I forgot even.
Okay, especially for a parent. They maybe they'll take the ovel's hand and help them, right? Because once again, the garments are not really meant for this. Our garments, even this may be 4 layers. This is 2 layers.
So because maybe those days they didn't have the ends were like. When we wove it,
people wear good shirts for a levaya. They don't come in shmatadik clothing, so it's even more difficult.
They were doing kriya, so they put on some crappy. They're doing kriya, so you don't put on
crappy, but it can be an older jacket.
An older jacket. I mean, you get older stuff. Yeah, because you don't want to. I mean, you know what I mean? Crap. You know what I mean? An older thing.
Anyways, it's back at the ranch. So the Gemara says Hasam loksiv vayamod. So Hasam loksiv vayamod vayomar. Says okay, so that's one proof. So we restored the proof and said the fact that the Torah goes out, the Tanakh goes out of the way and said that Eov stood up, Vayakam Vayikra means he got to stand up. That's one proof. Okay, now we come for those who didn't like that Eov may not be a member of the tribe. We have another proof. Amar Rabbi Bachama Minayin LeKriya Shema Umad. How do you know that you have to stand for Kriya, separate thing, or we start back with the same one? Shenema Vayakam Eov Vayikra. Okay. So the Gemara says, okay, Dilma Milsa Yetir Tahu the Avid. How do you know that Eov had to stand? Maybe it's simply he did an extra thing. He just wanted to stand, so he stood. The Ilo Tema Hachi, because if you don't say this, it says in the same pasuk or the same chapter for you, Vayagaz Esvosho, he started pulling out his hair. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, no Avel has to pull their hair out. We don't do this.
You're not supposed to.
You're not supposed to. Correct. You're not supposed to make yourself bald.
We'll cut yourself.
Correct. Right, but I'm saying this is like he's basically out of grief he's pulling his hair out. This is Eo.
An expression. He pulled his hair.
He pulled his hair. In other words, so the
to do that. It tells you specifically not to do that.
Correct. But I'm saying the point of it being that you see that Eo, after he finishes doing Kriya, it says Vayagaz Esvosho. He's so distraught, he's lost everything. He starts pulling his hair out. So hachanami. So then you should say that an Avel, if an Avel has to stand up to do Kriya, he also has to pull his hair out. We know that's not true. Therefore, Eov is tossed. Ela mehach. We have another proof. It says Vayakam HaMelech Vayikra Es Begadav. So this is David. This is David, who is clearly a member of the tribe, who is ripping Kriya when he hears that Avshalom. He thought Avshalom killed all his sons. In effect, Avshalom only killed, I think, Amnon. So when David hears what it later turns out to be erroneous news, he rips his garments, and it says there, Vayakam HaMelech, when he was told the news,
clearly stood up.
He stood up. Okay? So the Gemara says, V'dilma milsa yetirta avid. Maybe David was doing something extra. He didn't have to stand, but he simply was so hitched, he stood up. He did a milta yatera, an additional davar mutar. The lotema hachi vayishkav arza hachanami. So it says afterwards that after David did this, that he lay down on the ground, on the floor. In other words, he kind of just like went into a fetal position. He didn't know what to do. So he falls on the floor in complete distraughtness. And we know, and Hachanami, so the Aval should do the same thing as well. After he does Kriya, he should lie on the floor. And if not then sometime during the Avelis, he should be lying on the floor. So Gemara says, V'yatanya, we know that's not true. Yashav, this is now going back to Kfiyat HaMita.
Right.
Where it says, Yashav al-Mita, if the Avel sat on the bed normally, al gabe kisi, on a regular chair, al gabe udaina. Udaina is either like a big mixer bowl, which you would think of it as like a big round kind of chair that he just slumped into. So yotzi yedei chavaso. Right, like the old 60s chairs, right.
Yeah.
In other words, if the Avel sat on these kinds of chairs, or sat on the bed that was unturned over, or sat in the big mixer bowl, he didn't yot to the mitzvah. What mitzvah is? V'yam Rav Yochanan shlo kiyem kfiyas hamita. He didn't do kfiyat hamita, which means, and what's one of the things that he's not going to do kfiyat hamita? If he sat on the floor.
So meaning he does have to do or not?
So in other words, means he
sit on the floor.
Not sit on the floor. He has to sit on. He has to sit on a mita.
What's Ke'ein?
Right. So in other words, you have to sit on something. It's listing to you the things that you're sitting on that would not be correct, but you have to sit on something. You can't sit on the floor. So how could David HaMelech say he fell on the floor? We're saying that this becomes the paradigm for what the Oval does. He stands and does Kriya, and it looks like he sits on the floor. And we know sitting on the floor is not going to be Yotze the Mitzvah Kfiyat HaMita. So the Gemara says, V'yom Rav Yochanan shlokim Kfiyat HaMita, so Amalei Ke'ein Arza. When it means that David HaMelech fell on the floor, it doesn't mean that he actually sat on the floor. It means he sat on a low Kfiyat HaMita, which was very low, and he sat on something low to the ground. It's like saying as if he was almost on the floor, which is really, I said, this becomes our mocker. When we don't do Kfiyat HaMita, what do? We have the Avel either is to do Kfiyat HaMita, you would have to sit not on the floor. Our Avelim either sit either on the floor or something low next to it, but you don't lie on the floor.
So it's two things. Number one, are we suggesting that when they did Kfiyat HaMita, in those days, which was most of the time back then, that the Avel sat on the back of that Mita, so to speak?
Yes.
As a sign of Avelim?
That's how we sat. That's how we sat, correct.
Right? Didn't have to go on the ground.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And we're saying that David HaMelech did something similar in the sense that that's like being on the ground.
Correct. No, that's right. He wasn't actually on the floor. He was on something close to the ground. What we're saying, therefore, is when David HaMelech, the same way that David HaMelech sat on something low to the ground, like Kfiyat HaMita,
right,
which is low to the ground, which is part 2. Part A was when it says he stood up, means he actually, a novel has to stand up to do Kriya.
And sit on something low.
And then later sit on something low. So we're using this as the proof in terms of what the makar is for doing Kriya, for standing up for Kriya, which is coming from David HaMelech, who is standing up when he rips Kriya, hearing upon when he thought Absalom killed his sons. In fact, he only killed Amnon, and he was doing Kriya for that. And when it says he lay on the ground, it doesn't mean that he lay on the ground. It means he lay on Kfiyat HaMita, low to the ground.
Gotcha.
And that becomes the best proof that we have for why an Avel has to stand for doing Kriya. From David, who stands, so it says clearly Vayakam Vayikra, and when he hears that Amnon and he thought his other sons as well had died.
Even though the words were Vayishkav Arza, not Vayeshev Arza, but still.
That's exactly the point. He doesn't. He was.
Maybe these words Vayash because he was sitting on the mitam.
Correct, but Vayishkav Arza, exactly the point. Vayishkav Arza, what's the term?
Yeah,
Vayishkav Arza means that an Avel doesn't sleep on the ground.
Right.
An Avel sleeps on Kfiyat HaMita with the Mita upside down and low to the ground.
Perfect.
Okay. We'll just have a minute. Maybe we'll just start the next piece. Okay.
Sure.
So this becomes the source of where we know what an Avel can't do. No, this is simply a shopping list of some of the items. It's not, by the way, it's not comprehensive, but includes mostly isur and prohibitions for an Avel to do. Eila dvarim shavel asa bohem. The following things an Avel can't do. Boom. It's taken right from Masechus Smachos. Asa b'malacha, he can't do work. Okay. Uber chitza, he can't wash. Uber sicha, he can't anoint, which means you can't put on deodorant. Uvatash mishamita, can't engage in marital relations. Uvni lasasanda, can't wear shoes. V'asu likros b'tor navim u'ksuvim, he can't read Tanakh, he can't learn Tanakh. U'lashanot b'mishnah b'medrash b'halachas, and he can't learn Mishnah, Medrash, and halachas. Hashas, and Shas, obviously in the days of the Brises, they did not have Gemara, meant the discussions about the Mishnayos, Uba'agados. Okay, and V'mhoya Rabim Tzrichim Lo, Eino Nimna. But if people need him to paskin or to teach or to learn, then he's permissible to do so. So, for example, a rabbi has to give the Shabbos Hagadol drasha, Shabbos Shuvah drasha, then it would be permissible to do even when he is in Avel.
This is all Avelis or 7 days?
The 7 days. The Avel of Shiva.